When most of us picture yoga, we think of those incredible, complex poses, right? Holding a perfect warrior three or a headstand. But what if I told you that's just the tip of the iceberg? Today, we're going to peel back all those layers and get right to the profound philosophical heart of the practice. So let's just kick things off with a pretty big question. What if the goal of yoga isn't a perfect pose? What if, and stick with me here, the whole point of this ancient practice has absolutely nothing to do with physical perfection? What if the real destination isn't out there on the mat, but somewhere else entirely, somewhere deep inside? Okay, so the key to unlocking this whole idea, it lies in these ancient foundational texts called the Upanishads. And the word itself, it's amazing. It actually tells a story. It comes from Sanskrit upa, meaning near, ni, down, and shad, to sit. So literally to sit down near. It just paints this picture, right? A student sitting close to a teacher, absorbing this deep, esoteric wisdom. This is where the real philosophical roots of yoga begin. All right, so here's our roadmap for this journey. First, we're going to look at the Upanishads as this huge library of texts. Then we'll see how they map out all these different yogic paths that surprisingly all lead to one truth. After that, we'll dive into the core inner practices they all share. And finally, we'll connect it all back to see how this ancient wisdom is the foundation for pretty much all yoga we see today. Okay, first things first, we really need to get a handle on just how massive this collection is. See, the Upanishads, it's not like a single book you can just pick up and read. No way. Think of it more like an entire library of spiritual and philosophical thought, written and collected over hundreds and hundreds of years. So just how big are we talking? Well, one of the later texts, the Muktika Upanishad, actually gives us a number. It says there are 108 canonical Upanishads. 108. So yeah, we're not talking about a little pamphlet here. This is a seriously comprehensive body of work. And these 108 texts aren't just a random pile of scriptures. They're actually grouped into these really interesting categories. You've got the 13 principal Upanishads, which are kind of the philosophical core. Then there are 20 specifically called the Yoga Upanishads. And you even have others that focus on things like renunciation or devotion to specific deities like Shiva or Vishnu. It's a really diverse collection. Now, what's so cool about this is that these different categories of texts, they don't just hammer home one single idea. Instead, they actually lay out all these diverse spiritual paths. You could call them different yogas. And you can really see this connection when you look at what each category emphasizes. For example, those core principal Upanishads, they really point you towards jnana yoga, which is the path of knowledge. The Yoga Upanishads, as you might guess, get into the details of Raja and Hatha yoga, the paths of discipline. And then you have others, like the Vaishnava texts, which are all about bhakti yoga, the path of pure, heartfelt devotion. So you see, so many different paths, but they all fall under this one big umbrella. But here's the absolute kicker. Even with all these different paths, the destination is always the same. It's like all roads leading to one city. The ultimate goal for every single one is realizing the unity of Atman, which you can think of as the individual soul, your inner self, and Brahman, the supreme cosmic reality. It's about having that direct experience that you and everything are fundamentally one and the same. Okay, so if all these different paths are heading to the same place, the next logical question is, what do they have in common? What are the core, fundamental practices that underpin all of them? What are the universal principles that everyone on this journey needs to understand? Well, this is where the Upanishads were truly revolutionary. I mean, they completely shifted the focus of spiritual practice. Before them, a lot of it was about external rituals, physical sacrifices, what they called the outer fire. The Upanishads said, hold on, the real work isn't out there. They turned everything inward. The new focus became inner realization, self-knowledge, what they called the inner flame of awareness. And that idea, that's the absolute bedrock of all Upanishadic yoga.
So what does this inner work actually look like in practice? Well, it's really built on a few key pillars. First, there's Atmajnana, which is just a fancy way of saying self-knowledge, really knowing who you are. Then there's dhyana, meditation, and getting control over that monkey mind. You also have the mastery of prana, or your vital life energy. And finally, there's vairagya, which is about developing this deep sense of equanimity and detachment from all the ups and downs of the world.
And this is so important, because listen to this quote from the Katha Upanishad. It says, the self cannot be realized by study, nor by intellect, nor by hearing, but only by one whom the self chooses. Wow. I mean, that's powerful, right? It's a huge reminder that this isn't some academic thing. You can't just read enough books or think hard enough to get there. It's a profound, direct experience that goes way beyond the intellect. It's a state of being, not just an idea you can grasp.
And this ultimate state, this peak experience, it has a name: Brahma Yoga. It is the final union. This is the moment where that feeling of being a separate me just dissolves. Your individual consciousness, the Atman, completely merges with that cosmic self, Brahman. All the separation, all the duality, it just disappears. And all that's left is oneness.
All right, so for our last section, let's bring it all home. We're going to connect all these dots and see how this incredibly ancient, profound philosophy became the absolute foundation for literally every single form of yoga that we know of in the world today.
And the evolution is actually super clear when you lay it out. You start with the Upanishads. They gave us the philosophical why. The whole point is union with the absolute. Then, centuries later, you get texts like the famous Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which gave us the systematic how, a clear, 8-limbed path to follow. And from that solid base, all the later traditions we see today, Hatha, Tantra, you name it, they all emerged as different expressions of that one original goal.
So what this really shows us is that the Upanishads aren't just some dusty old history books. Not at all. They are the living, breathing, philosophical heart of yoga. Every single tradition, every style, every school of thought you can think of, ultimately, it draws its lifeblood right from the incredible insights that were first laid out in these texts. And this all brings us to this really beautiful final insight. In the Upanishadic view, yoga isn't just one thing. It's kind of two things at once. It's the means, the discipline, the meditation, the path that you're walking, but it's also the state. It's the destination itself. It's that liberated awareness, that union, that total oneness. In the end, the journey really is the destination. So we end right back where we started with a question for you. The Upanishads teach us that all those poses on the mat, as amazing as they are really just the preparation. They're the warm-up for the real journey, the ultimate journey, which is inward. So the only question left to ask is, where will you begin?